Okay, well, I'm Paula Harris, and I'm going to be doing a presentation today, and it's a whole new experiment for me. And I'm going to share the screen so that you people can see what I'm talking about. It is going to be about Space Brothers, cosmic messages, and my latest travels. Have been studying a long time, and I will show you in my presentation all the conclusions I've come to. And I really am going to tell you that it's not as simple as we think it is. The whole research that I started was nuts and bolts, and where I ended up was consciousness. So I'm going to be mentioning consciousness constantly. And when I say consciousness, I mean, people need to define what that is, but it's the consciousness defined by me is the state of being awake and aware that you're not only a person, you're not only flesh and blood, but you are made up of spirituality, metaphysical components, the stars, one with the cosmos, and a lot of unseen characteristics. Consciousness, really, to live in consciousness means to be awake all the time and understand everything around you. So when I keep mentioning consciousness, that's my definition. What I'd like to share with you is that I have just come back from Europe. I am a field researcher. I'm known as a photojournalist and investigative reporter, which means I do all the stories. I don't decide whether it's real or not until I finish researching it. And so being an investigative reporter is being a detective. And I have the honor of being one of the only ones that do field research, which means I go all around the world. I won't do a case for somebody that just emails me or picks up a phone and talks to me. I've got to meet them. One case that I did involved Clark McClellan, who worked at NASA as a ground crew engineer. And I needed to go down to walk through the NASA facilities there at Cape Kennedy with him to even understand what his role was, what he did, what he saw, and so forth. So I got to go where the witness lives. I have to interview them. I will talk about Veronica Poswell's, my having to drive up to Canada to interview her, because that's the only way I can do it. So my work is on location. And people say, well, how does she do it? Well, it's from my own pocket, from my own dime. I don't have any sponsors. People don't consider this worthwhile necessarily. And I just, when I was teaching, I had my teaching salary. Today it's very, very difficult to put together the funds to do field research, but that's the only kind of research I can do. In the end of May, I went to Italy. And you'll see my Italian trip, and I did research there. And then I went to Barcelona, Spain, and you'll see the research that I did there in Spain. So I came back with a lot of material that I have to disseminate. I have written 5 books, and they're all on Amazon.com. Exopolitics, How Do You Speak to a Ball of Light, Stargate to a New Reality, all of the above and beyond. My first book, which is probably the best, UFOs Making Sense of the Phenomena, Connecting the Dots, Making Sense of the Phenomena. The latest book is Nuts and Bolts, so I'm glad it's over with because I'm into consciousness, but it's Colonel Corso, Conversations with Colonel Corso. And it deals with all the audio tapes I have when Colonel Corso and I in Italy used to have long conversations. As people know, he is the co-writer of The Day After Roswell, talks about back engineering, alien technology, and so forth. I'm going to begin the slideshow now, but I'm going to suggest that if people want to take notes, there's books in this slideshow that are very important. The books are important because they verify a lot of my research, but also they are the source books. In other words, they are the books that the people themselves wrote about their experience. So, and I'm going backwards in time. I will be going and talking about the 1950s. So, and those books are still around. You just have to look for them in bookstores online. So please take a a piece of paper and pencil, and if you're interested in anything as part of this conference, please write it down. So let's begin by saying I'm going to talk about the Space Brother movement. I moved into exopolitics. This is exopolitica in Italian, because about 20 years ago or so, maybe even less, I met Dr. Michael Sala, and I became involved with the Exopolitics Institute, which made it really an academic study of UFOs. In other words, I have a master's degree in education, so I wasn't just going to play around with this. And you know, at that time I was writing for magazines, but there is no place to place this. We just have to do it in a university style, keeping all our files and archives together. Everything I do for the future. This one is basically says join the cosmic neighborhood to higher consciousness. The awakening of consciousness is the next evolutionary step for mankind, because I think we are technologically astute, but as I hear a lot of whistleblowers say, what they say is that our spirituality does not match our technology. So, you know, that is the next step. I mean, the raising of consciousness is what I'm dedicated to, what a lot of the people that I talk to are dedicated to. The books have been translated into Italian, Esopolitica, and you know, also into Spanish. So I write for these two magazines. They're called X Times. When I'm doing stories like I did all the stories on the Latin American contactees, I just feel like I need to disseminate it to the world. In the United States, there's really no magazine I can place it, and they're very well done. The articles I take my own pictures, and they're interviews, and they have a lot of information. And, you know, I could do it on internet, but I'm getting sick of internet research because it's not all founded. It's not all based on fact. I want it to go into print media. So right now it's only in Italian. It's these magazines that are published in Rome, in Italy. Esopolitica is the only a Spanish book I have out, and I think it's Edizioni Obelisco from Barcelona. You know, it's selling really well because it's all interviews. All my books are interviews, and I am moving into the Latin speaking world. I began my career, as people know, with Dr. J. Allen Hynek, because I saw the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Well, that moved me so much that I went to Evanston, Illinois. You can see it's Evanston, Illinois, the Center for UFO Studies at that time. In 1993, I got my card. I went to see him in 1981. In 1983, I got my card. But Alan, who used to, he is the godfather of ufology. I mean, he basically worked for Project Blue Book. He's an astronomer. He taught at Northwestern. When he would talk to me, he would talk to me in scientific terms. It was very, very concrete. So I knew it was real. I didn't have to ask, do you believe in UFOs? He had me doing things like translating in Italian sightings, plus I drove him around and we talked often. I was a family friend, so Alan and Mimi and I and my boyfriend at the time used to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico. He was a wonderful man. He was a man who before his, you know, I think untimely death in 1986 from a brain tumor, before that, he would have gone on to just really delve into this. He wanted to know about everything. He was a lot in South America, studied everything, the contactees, implants, crops. He studied it all. He wanted to put it together. And ironically enough, he and I are Tauruses with Sagittarius rising. Really, really enjoyed this man. There I am in Boulder, Colorado, when he came to visit NCAR, the National Center for Atmospheric Research. And he would come and visit, and you know, Close Encounters for many people, not just for me, opened up my whole world. Close Encounters was the film that touched my heart. It was about contact in the end. It was about the government cover-up. It was also about, you know, mass. It was like a mass meetings and so forth that were secret with the AETs and the government. But it was done in a way that really helped. It was done in a way that you know, really could you know, help us understand that there was contact a long time ago. So we corresponded a lot, Ellen and I. And I remember he said, you know, that we had to keep a sense of humor, because, I mean, when you get into this subject, it's so heavy that you know, you feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders. But, you know, we have to, he loved cartoons. We had to keep a sense of humor about what was happening, and we have to look at it all. Now, the new book that I have, and this is why, for all the people that want the word for word interviews I did with the people you're going to see on the screen, you're going to need to go to All the Above and Beyond on Amazon. That book is 300 pages long, but the last, say, 150 pages has all the Latin American contactees in it. I've been to Chile, I've been to Argentina, I've been to Mexico City, I've been to Bogota, Colombia. I've been to Latin America, and truthfully, and I'm one of the only researchers going to say this, but then I'm real. I mean, I'm out there doing this. Is the truth is down in Latin America. I mean, it is not entertainment down there. Things are happening that are so paranormal, and I feel that probably the cultures that are visiting us, the cosmic cultures, feel that the Latin American people are not interested in how the craft works. They're not interested in the propulsion. They're not interested in back engineering. They're interested in contact. I mean, real contact. So I went to Italy the end of May, and I released my book in Italian. You'll see Così Parlò Philip Corso. That's the very you know, wonderful cover of my Italian book that has the being that Colonel Corso met at White Sands. Colonel Corso had contact in 1957. It's in the book. But since it's not part of what I'm supposed to talk about today, I'm not going to go into the Corso book. The Conversations with Colonel Corso has his documents. It has his whole military record. It has everything in the back. It even has an autopsy report from an extraterrestrial that he said was at the Walter Reed Hospital. He said that Corso did go to Wright-Patterson a lot, but that he got some information from Walter Reed, that he was, remember, we're only Army, so all the installations and everything he talks about are Army-oriented. 1960, Corso got the artifacts to the Roswell crash. He was never in Roswell. He was very criticized in the United States. Our own colleagues that are the greatest debunkers of all criticized him. So everything that's in that book, and a lot of what he told us at the magazine that you saw, and he told us in 1997 and 1998 in Italy. Okay, there is Colonel Corso with us in Italy, and who was with us also. People will recognize Bob Dean and Carlos Diaz. Also Wendell Stevens that we don't see there, and also Desmond Leslie, who wrote the books on Adamski. Now it's really important I mention Desmond Leslie, because later on I would come to understand exactly who Adamski was. There on the bottom is a slide of me with my boss, Maurizio Baiata, who was the person that sponsored that whole entire conference in 1998 with Colonel Corso, and also was part of the San Marino initiative to bring this to the United Nations. San Marino's an independent republic, just like Grenada. We tried to open it up to the United Nations. They had nothing to lose, and Corso signed the papers. Corso wrote something really interesting, because, I mean, as I'm talking to you about my career and my work, I will tell you that I think I've been placed at the right place at the right time. I call it the assignment. I don't use the word mission. George Nuri, I just did a Beyond Belief with him and Gaia, and he said, "You're on a mission." I said, "No, that sounds too religious." It was an assignment. It was an assignment to bring forth all the whistleblowers and to do a good job just interviewing them, So when Colonel Corso I wrote the preface to The Day After Roswell in Italian. He wrote to Paola, "A new world will dawn for you, and you will be in the forefront," which I think he hoped that we would change as humanity, and we would have a new world. Now, what do I love to do the most? What I love to do the most is look at the stars and look at the Milky Way and, you know, communicate under the stars. And it's really hard for a woman to go do that in my neighborhood. I can't just go take a chair, sit in some field and, you know, do CE5 protocols. So I tag along with Stephen Greer. I was part of the film, you know, Sirius. I was in the movie Sirius. We shot it at Crestone, Colorado. I have just bought 5 acres in Crestone, Colorado to do that again. Dr. Gersting's interested in coming back. And you can't just go out there and just order aliens to show up. That is not what we do. What we do is there are certain protocols, and in Greer's case, he does the puja ceremony in Sanskrit, a whole entire ritual with fruit and flower petals and everything, and then we do heavy meditations, and it's 6 days, and it's from 9 to 12, and you know, 9 to 1, not even 9 to 12, between 1 and 2 we go to bed, and everybody's in the bed and breakfast, and our whole biological clock is just messed up because you go to bed so late and you sleep in, but you are then in an atmosphere, in a kind of a vibration, kind of a, you know, I don't know how to explain it because Ricardo Gonzalez, I'll have to talk to you about this also, does the same thing. And what that does is throw you off your regular time schedule. It throws you off your regular life. You're out there in the middle of the wilderness with a different time schedule, not thinking about your daily work. It changes your whole perspective, and it changed mine. I have the quote that Stephen gives me always at the last day. He hugs everybody and he says, "Why would you want to go home? Why would you want to do anything else?" And you know, it is addicting to sit there. And even if you don't see anything, what happens is the same epiphany, I think, that Dr. Mitchell told me about. I was very close to Edgar Mitchell. You're staring at the Milky Way. You're staring at all the stars. And without realizing it, you go up there on some kind of spiritual level and you become one. And you understand. That's consciousness. You understand you are one with the universe. You don't hear cars, trucks, you know, all distractions. You're out there in the total quiet. And Dr. Mitchell, Edgar Mitchell, told me that is what changed his life. Basically, that when he was going to the moon, he had an epiphany. He felt one with the cosmos. And of course, God bless him, he is one with the cosmos now. Okay, so this is kind of a great picture of this picture, because I've been down to the very large array in Dattle, New Mexico. It's like just out of Socorro. Everybody can go there. And that's where the film Contact with Jodie Foster was filmed. So when I went there, I was like really excited. Here I am, you know, and these radio telescopes that make this clicking sound, this noise sound, you know, they're waiting for the magic signal, and there must be like 25 of them, and they're all lined up pointing to the sky. If that isn't inspiring, I don't know what is. It's like, really, that is so inspiring. And I was there several times, and you know, did some film, shot some film there, shot a promo for my Laughlin conference. It's just an incredible place. But that's what we're doing. We're looking to connect with the cosmos. When you do field work, or when you're out there with Dr. Greer, with Ricardo and so forth, that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so there's exopolitics, there's consciousness, the awakening of consciousness, the next evolutionary step for mankind, the books, and the Italian one, the magazines I write for. You can see the screen, I hope. All right, these are the books. There's the Spanish book. And there's Dr. J. Allen Hynek. There I am with Allen Hynek when we were in Boulder. There's Allen, a portrait of Allen. This is something he wrote to me about keeping your sense of humor This is the book I was talking about that has all the contactees in it, the South American contactees. Here's the Italian book, very great cover. And the Conversations with Colonel Corso, I talked a little bit about Colonel Corso and what he did and how important it was. Here's Colonel Corso. I hope you can see Robert Dean and Carlos Diaz and so forth.
Well, we can see everything.
Good. And there's what Colonel Corso had written to me on the day after Roswell. Yeah, I'm excited you can see everything. Okay, there I am with Steve McGrew. You got to see this picture. I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere in Durango, Colorado, doing CE5s. And, you know, it's part of what I love to do, sit there and see the stars. There is where we are. I was talking about the very big array in Dattle, New Mexico. I think people could see that now. There's Jodie Foster. There I am. And our efforts, I mean, that may be SETI, but so what? I mean, at least they're looking for life out there. I'm sure that they've gotten signals they're not talking to us about. This is where we stopped, right there. So that's what I want people to look at, that slide in particular. This slide is very, very important because this slide shows that we need to get off the cartoon entertainment in a really silly kind of representation of ETs. The Latin American people have given me designs, drawings of the actual physical people that come off ships, physical people like this. And then I had to say, well, why are they going there? And they never came here, but they did come here. And that's my presentation. I'm going to start with a little bit of the history of the human type alien contact. And this is where you might want to take the notes because the books are out there. You just have to go and find them. So what we're doing, and I'm trying to change the slide and it won't change, is looking at the possibility that we have some of these people. Now, this is a human being. This is a photograph of an ET being. This is from the Mauricio Cavallo files. You can see her ears aren't regular. She's got a bluish tint. She is from Clarion. She has a name I can't pronounce, and the name of the book, and it's part of my presentation, is Beyond the Heavens. Mauricio Cavallo in the 1970s was able to do Polaroids of the beings. They said, okay, and they were a federation, so they had different kinds of beings on the ship. So this is not a human child. And this is a very interesting whole kind of situation because this is an image I saw online that just really might show the future of humanity. The stories that I'm going to be talking about are in the book, in Timothy Good's book that's called Earth and Alien Enterprise. I think that's an incredible book. I'm going to go back because Timothy Good and Gerard Arston from the Netherlands, and I brought him to my conference in Laughlin, Nevada in 2014, he blew everybody away, have done extensive work on the Space Brother movement. And Gerard Arston, he's on internet a lot, he's on Facebook, and he talks about his research on George Adamski, on the Space Brothers movement, and you know, that really we're talking about human type peoples living on other planets that visited us. And Out of the Stars is a book written by Robert Short, who had contact with these people in the 1950s. Robert was driving from Hollywood down to Southern California near Giant Rock. I'm going to talk about the Giant Rock people. You might recognize the Integratron there in the corner. But I had to get those people together because that's where the Space Brother movement with Adamski and Van Tassel and Howard Menger and Orfeo Angelucci and Graham Bethune, all those people got together because they had contact with human type beings. And this came right after the atomic bomb explosion in the Trinity site. And the thing is that in 1945, when that happened, that awakened a whole bunch of cosmic cultures to come here and visit. Now, this is an interesting document. The sons of God are everywhere. Sometimes we have difficulties in recognizing our own brothers, and that's Pope John, I'm sorry, the 23rd. There's Wilbur Smith, the human race in the form of man extends throughout the universe and is incredibly ancient. He was a Canadian engineer. George Adamski, space travelers are identical to us, only that they have a deeper understanding of themselves and the cosmos of which we are all inhabitants. A lot of them are Italian cases, because I'm going to talk about the Amicizia case. If you see on the bottom there, Nikola Duper, he's a Croatian researcher, he said there, and he's quoting from Amicizia, from friendship, which happened in 1956, by the way. They are human indeed. In comparison, it's we terrestrials who are less than human. They are much more human than we are. So, you know, these are the different, it is all of it. It is interdimensional, it's planetary, it's physical, it's metaphysical, and paranormal. It is a new science. There has been a big controversy, and I'm going to mention it in this webinar, over, you know, MUFON's supposed to be scientific, and people are supposed to do scientific. You want to explain to me what kind of science these people are using, these cultural, cosmic cultures are using? It certainly isn't ours. So if we shove their science into our box, what in the world are we going to do? It is a ridiculous way of thinking. We have to adapt our science to what the new paradigm is. And Colonel Corso mentioned that. He said to us, he said, well, you have to invent a new science. Invent a new science. I mean, these beings are coming through the wall. They can bilocate, they can levitate, they appear and disappear, craft appear and disappear, they bilocate, they have a different kind of dimensional science. To say that we have to use an antiquated science to prove that UFOs are real is probably one of the stupidest arguments in science there is. If you want to go to a newer science, go into the quantum theory, the non-locality, the quantum entanglement that Dean Radin is doing at IONS, at Edgar Mitchell's Institute, the people that are really avant-garde. I mean, Einstein certainly didn't use his own science to explain relativity. So it's all of it. And I remember that one of the quotes of Hynek was, Paula, don't throw out the paranormal. It may scare you, but it's part of this. So I went back to the future. The first conference I did in Laughlin, Nevada was called Back to the Future. This is George Van Tassel. There is Giant Rock, actually I think before it split. George Van Tassel was contacted by what he called Venusians, people from Venus. He had a little shop. I think they had a little hot dog stand underneath the rock. Since Van Tassel was one who rented he rented an airstrip. That's what he was doing. Because I think he had worked for an aviation company. He just basically rented the airstrip so that people, airplanes could fly in. The craft actually floated on the airstrip. The being came out. He was a man. He walked up to Van Tassel, and he told him who he was, and that he said, I have some news for you, some messages. You're going to have to go on TV. And he did. He went on the Arthur Godfrey show, the Jack Parr show. These are old shows, old talk shows, and tell the world that they better stop playing around with nuclear. It's very dangerous, and say that there are people from outer space, us, who are watching the planet. Then this being, said like a lot of other beings, because I'm going to give you messages from these beings, because basically I read the books, and then I went to find the people. And the only one that was still alive from the Van Tassel days is Robert Short. That's why you should read Out of the Stars, because he knew Van Tassel very well. And Robert Short also had contact with a human type alien who walked off a ship. Van Tassel was told that we don't live long enough. This is a message you're going to get from Val Thor, from Howard Menger, and so forth. And that to build a kind of structure called the Integratron. The structure had Tesla coils. It was supposed to be a rejuvenation chamber, but it was supposed to also be a time machine. Just as it was being finished being built, Van Tassel died. But it's interesting because I talked to Sergio Lube, who knew Van Tassel's wife, and said that Van Tassel knew he was going to pass on and told his wife, I have work to do on other planets. And that's real interesting to me. He knew he was going to have a heart attack. Same thing with George Adamski. A week before, he gave all his materials to Fred Steckling and said he was going to pass on too. So I'm really wondering about this. In any case, what you might like to know is that the Integratron was built or was financed by Howard Hughes. And Howard Hughes is very important. Howard Hughes, I'm sure he was involved in all this stuff. I mean, the people in California, the Space Brother movement, the advent of Maharishi, the Enlightenment Society, and all this started a new age situation in California that pointed to the cosmos, pointed to the stars. But then that's how you have to study ufology. You know, you have to look at the date this was built. You have to look where everybody was, who was interested in it at the time. Some very top level writers were interested in the Space Brother movement. This is still there. You want to go to Joshua Tree, you want to go to Landers, California, this is still there. The only thing is being used for sound baths, which means those, you know, kind of Tibetan bowls. You kind of pay to go in and you have a sound bath meditation. I've done that, it's beautiful. The people that were there at the time, there is George Van Tassel, Orfeo Angelucci, Truman Bethune, who had an encounter with a female alien, and George Adamski, and I met later Desmond Leslie, who is Sir Desmond Leslie. The books are Aboard the Flying Saucers Have Landed. Are they worth reading? Yeah, because that's what happened. Those are the people telling what happened on the spot. It isn't some UFO researcher trying to debunk something and just making an overall statement. What happened, the dates that it happened, where it happened, and what happened are in these books. Flying Saucers Have Landed and Aboard a Flying Saucer. I have some 300 of these books here. I mean, I've got the old ones, but the new ones and everything that's coming out, I can't understand how I would get my information from a secondhand source. The White Sands incident at the same time period, because they all got together. Daniel Fry, physicist, it's too hot at White Sands in New Mexico. This craft landed. Daniel Fry takes a ride to New York in minutes. Doesn't feel the propulsion at all. Both Adamski and Adamski and Billy Meyer had rides in the craft, and also I think Howard Menger. They said they didn't feel anything. They just sat there and they could see from the windows. I've talked to a lot of contactees who have told similar kinds of stories. Now, Daniel Fry, who was a physicist, it affected him. So he started a group called Understanding, and he started it in New Mexico. And he talked about the Space Brotherhood and the many messages that and it was a message of unity that they had. I returned to Giant Rock with Robert Short in 2014 because, you know, I thought you were here with all those guys, you know, let's bring you back. Let me tell you about Robert Short that you need to know. Okay, honoring the past and invitation to the future. I had to go backwards. There's Robert Short's book, and there's and here's Howard Menger's. I will talk about Robert Short because what happened with him was that he told me, just like the Yamichitsa case, they were communicating with the ETs through crystal radio. And they were on a certain frequency, and the ETs would be talking to them. They would sound like they were echoing from God knows where, but they would be talking to them. And what happened was that the FBI found out about it and told them that it was against the law and took the frequency off the radio. So the beings that came, Corton, that came, I forgot from where he came, the being that Robert Short was in contact with was Corton, asked permission of Robert to use his vocal cords to relay messages. So if they couldn't do the crystal radio, they needed a human vocal cord, and Robert did channelings next to George Van Tassel for many years in the 1960s, 1950s and 60s. And so I thought, well, let me bring him back there and see if we get a message. Let me bring Robert back there. Robert was in his 80s with his wife. I sponsored a whole group back there, and I'll talk about taking us back there because it's very important. Here we have the book From Outer Space to You. It absolutely changed my world. It was very clear. It had photographs, and we learned later that Howard Menger, here's Howard Menger, his contact was in Hybrid, New Jersey. So we had both the Damsky at Palomar Gardens, he was a desert center in San Diego, and we had Van Tassel in Landers, California, and we had on the other coast, we had this guy. And nobody has researched this guy the way they're supposed to. I mean, he had a paint shop in Highbridge, New Jersey. When he was 10 years old, he saw this beautiful woman. You can see the picture on the bottom. And she said, "We've been watching you, Howard." And when later in life, behind his house in Highbridge, and you're going to see his house, because I obtained some 100 photos from the Wendell Stevens archive of Howard Menger with his first wife, Rose, talking and lecturing in his orchard. And there's Val Thor sitting there. And then I got from that archive a audio tape from the photographer, and there's Val Thor on the top here. You can see him in this photo, in this photo montage, and you'll see more. The photographer was told by Howard, come to I have a gathering in the orchard, and there are 3 ETs there. They're space people, and I can't tell you who they are. You got to figure out who it is. So here's the audio tape of this poor photographer, August Roberts, telling Wendell Stevens, I had to find out who they were, and he took the pictures of Val Thor and Jill and Don. Here is Howard Menger, and later in life he's passed on. His wife Connie is still alive, and she's in Vero Beach, Florida. I could not get an interview with Connie. I really wanted to. Here's Connie when she was young. There's Howard. Howard was given propulsion system machine, which the people here at Colorado Springs were interested in, because if you study his biography, they had him working here at NORA, in the facilities at Colorado Springs. I don't know exactly where it was, but it was on engineering. At the very end of his life, he was so sick and tired of being criticized, debunked, that he said, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. And here are some of the pictures on the bottom from the Wendell Stevens archive. Howard and Connie have their arm around a being that comes out pure light. You could see pure light being. That is a black and white photograph. I had to scan it, so it's a little grainy. Doesn't appear in any book. It is in the Wendell Stevens archive. And Wendell Stevens had pictures of everything. The 2 top pictures are from the book, From Outer Space to You. Howard was given not only little machines, he was given fruit. He was given, one of the things about the book that really got to me was that at the end of the book, there's 30 pages on how to keep your blood alkaline, because acid blood causes all kinds of diseases. And there's pictures of fruit and the places he sent them to, dried fruit that the aliens gave him, and the places that Howard sent them to be analyzed. His contacts look a lot like Eugenio Siracusa's contacts, and I'll talk about Eugenio. These are amazing photos. These are black and white Kodak photographs. They're not in any book. And there's the 2 beings. You can see Howard standing next to them. There's no way in 1952 you can make that. The being is on the bottom, on the photograph on the bottom. They're just radiating light. Maybe these beings are able to get on the ship without walking up a plank. They're able to bilocate, and maybe whatever they're using technologically doesn't appear on a photo. Up there, a rock from the surface of the moon and a piece of fruit. That's a process, but I even have the places he sent them to. Does anybody do research on Howard Menger? No. It's like he doesn't exist. They'll say he denied his story or whatever. That's not true. There's Howard and Connie with his book, giving it to Edward Condon at the University of Colorado in 1969. If it wasn't real, what is he doing at the Condon Report at the University of Colorado, which was an Air Force study on UFOs? There's Howard, there's Connie. They want something done. And this photo is amazing because it shows he's giving the book to Condon to say, this was my experience, this is real, Space Brothers are real, Contact is real, they gave me stuff, it's all being ignored. Now we'll go to the photographs. This is Howard Menger's, it's his garden in High Bridge, New Jersey. Some year I'm going to go there and go back to that house and go behind that house where these people used to land and do proper research. Nothing has been done here. He was married to Rose at the time. I think they had 2 boys. And if you look really closely, there's Val Thor writing something, Jill and Don next to him. Now, the story of Val Thor, you're going to have to go grab the book, if you can get it, Stranger in the Pentagon and the white version, because it's Frank Stranges was talking for many years about his relationship with Val Thor, and the fact that Val Thor had Victor 1 parked over Lake Mead, which is Nevada. Nevada is a very strange state. My God, the Howard, not only was Val Thor parked over Lake Mead, you have Charles Hall, Area 51 weatherman, actually it was Area 53, with the tall whites there. You have all kinds of stuff going on in Nevada. These photos of Val Thor happen to be photos taken by August Roberts, and the audio tape I have. Stranges says that Val Thor came to speak to, and there's Val Thor with Jill and Don. You know, these guys are super dressed. You look at everybody else. They've just got, you know, they're hanging around with, you know, very casual clothing, shorts, skirts, and these guys look like they're going to a party. I find even Fred Steckling told me that the beings didn't know how to blend in, and they would wear suits and try to blend in that way because, but this is overdressed. This is overkill. There is a letter to Wendell Stevens from August Roberts saying, look, I was invited to Howard Menger's, you know, backyard. There, he told me there were 3 ETs. I didn't know which, I didn't want him to be intimidated. There's a lot of people there. I walked around. These are the 3 people that struck out to me right there. There's Val Thor writing, you know, Commander Valiant Thor, Jill, and Don. Okay, there's the color picture. You see Val Thor, Jill, and Don there. Everybody's casual. These guys have suits. And anyway, this is the back of Howard Menger. Maybe I've got to keep this picture because I got to figure out exactly, you know, where this house is. There he is. He's taking notes. See how casual everybody else is. And we tried to look at what was written, and we are related to you, we share one God. We got that part in there. You know, Frank Stranges was a minister. He was a spiritual man, and Val Thor reached out to him and and Frank actually got his information from someone in the Pentagon, and he talks about it if you read his book, how he just walked through the Pentagon and they just let him do it, you know, and they thought that he had a badge when he really didn't. This is, you know, Val Thor went to Eisenhower with 2 messages. Number 1, about the nuclear situation, because it was the times where, you know, I remember being a kid and having to go under the desk at school because we were going to have a nuclear blast any minute. And, you know, Russia was pointing missiles at us and we were pointing missiles at them, and we had discovered the atomic bomb and everybody was afraid of us. And so other people just, I mean, it's a no-win chess game. It's a no-win chess game. And you think that those people don't understand that? Anyway, I wanted to go because I travel everywhere to Lake Mead, to where Victor 1 is supposedly cloaked and parked and over Lake Mead. Now, does this look like Earth to you? This is Lake Mead, and it is super strange. I can see where Victor 1, and if you read the accounts of what Val says Victor 1 is an entire city. It's got, you know, living quarters and trees and everything inside. It's like a mothership. And it supposedly was parked here. And there I am at Lake Mead. in order to go back to those days, and Howard Menger was part of this group. He'd come here. I mean, there's pictures of him here. In order to look at this really well, I had to bring Robert Short back to do some filming and to do some channeling if he could. He had just had throat cancer. He didn't know if he could do it, but I tried anyway. Now, here is, it talks about Van Tassel's book, I Wrote on a Flying Saucer, recounts some of the cosmic wisdom he received from Sol Gonda and a large number of other godlike space brothers. Among his work is the Council of Seven Lights. You can get that, Into This World and Out Again. If you could find these books, Religion and Science Merged and When the Stars Look Down. I can't get them all. I tried to get as many as I could and read them. But I guess, in a lot of ways, they're the guys all together there. They came together in one place, Giant Rock, because in the 1950s, a lot of people, were able to come together in a conference outside and look for Space Brothers, or look for the craft. David Garcia, who was with us at the time, and also Craig Campobasco, Sergio Lube, Tom Hamlin, we all tried to really listen to what Robert Short had to say, because you can see his age. He was there. He actually could tell us what the messages were. Shirley, his wife, she even had some, in a box, she had some angel hair that had fallen on her car, what we call angel hair, which is like a glass type substance that falls from the craft. We went out to Giant Rock. We put Robert in a chair, and believe it or not, he was able. It's another voice that came through his vocal cords, and it was a miracle because he had throat cancer and didn't think he could do it. He goes into a trance, and when we have to put a mask on his eyes, the message that was given. It's very important you pay attention to this one, because it's the same message we just got in Monte Perdido in Spain with Ricardo Gonzalez. It's called The End of Separation, and through this vocal communication given to Robert Short, we were given a message about geopolitical events, from international politics to currency changes, to the mention of Vladimir Putin. Now we're in 2014, we're sitting out there and I'm going, Putin? What's he got to do with anything? But somehow, those people up there are time travelers. They know what's coming down the next couple of years. The mention of Vladimir Putin, I remember when he was talking about this, and I can send anybody that wants the whole entire channeling, because we printed it out. It is also on a DVD that we did on Giant Rock. We did a presentation at my Laughlin conference in 2014. We have part of the video of him saying this, and because I think it's important, I had to go back there to see how they did it. The general idea was that we all find some way to communicate on common ground for the survival of this planet, that we need to come together, that we are in crisis mode, similar to the 1950s. And you probably can't read that, but I'm reading it. I'm reading the slide because we were there and we're watching him channel this. And guess what? Over Giant Rock appears one craft. I think there were two, one on each side, but David Garcia is the only one that got the photo. We were all taking pictures to see if we could get something, and he got the photo of the craft. There's the craft. And that's the plasma heat shield around it in broad daylight. It's very important, and I'm going to have Glenn Steckling at Laughlin this year speaking. It's very important you listen to him, because Glenn Steckling is the son of Fred Steckling, who was the gatekeeper for the Adamski material. In other words, Fred Steckling accompanied George Adamski all over Europe. George Adamski stayed at his house, and a week before he died, Adamski gave Fred Steckling a leather briefcase that Glenn is carrying around now with a lot of things that are interesting. He showed me a Polaroid picture that's very interesting. Plus, he has a gold coin from Pope John the 23rd, because just before he died, Pope John the 23rd was waiting for George Adamski. Pope John the 23rd, if you study, go on Google, had an encounter in Castel Gandolfo with a blonde ET that came up to him and told him some things. And so by the time Adamski did all the tour of Europe, he went to the kings and queens and so forth, you know, to tell them, to give them a precise message. This is 1950s now. His contact was called Orthon. These people, whether it was Adamski, Van Tassel, Menger, or Eugenio Siracusa, said the people came from Venus. Now, is there life on Venus? There probably is, and we'll never know because it's being wiped out on from the film, or it's being canceled from the film, or if there's some strange structures, it's not on any film, because then we start a whole other dialogue. I asked Glenn Steckling, ask Glenn Steckling about the Venus thing, because he was very interesting what he told me about what NASA said about calibrating the satellites when they went by Venus. It is not that it's too hot to live on Venus. So anyway, these people call themselves Venusians. They could be from Venus, or maybe they're not from Venus, but they were human-type beings who call themselves Venusians. Now, Timothy Good has done an amazing job. I quoted his book, and I think you saw Earth and Alien Enterprise at the beginning of my presentation, because it covers the Amichitsa case. But Timothy Good met some of Adamski's people. He met the woman that has the Adamski film footage of the ships. There's movies. It's not that he made up the pictures in the 1950s. There's movies of the ship coming down that looks like that with the 3 balls underneath in a garden. The contact was real. Adamski was real, but he was also one strange person. Adamski, like Billy Meyer, went to India. And when I hear people going to India and spending a lot of time in India, I begin to think, okay, now there's esoteric knowledge hidden in India about ETs and about the whole entire UFO phenomenon that some of these people found out about in advance. So anyway, in the book, Earth and Alien Enterprise, and I think everybody should buy that book. It's just amazing because it talks all about there's one case of human-type alien group that landed in Helena, Montana, that the ship, there was something wrong with the ship, so this boy from his farm was watching them fix their ship on his land. Why aren't these things reported? All we see is little gray aliens running around like cartoons, abducting people. And it's ridiculous we don't look at the entire picture, and certainly ridiculous that we don't look at the history of ufology. It's not too much trouble, and people shouldn't be telling you what to think, because you have to know the books, and you have to know the dates, and you have to know what happened, and you have to talk to the people in order to get the truth. In this case, the Adamski is not talked about. Adamski is real. I not only spoke to Desmond Leslie about it later when he met Colonel Corso, because he's the one that wrote the book Flying Saucers Have Landed, but he also shared with us Adamski did not have an umbilical cord. He had like a star thing that came out, and he you know, was kidding around and said he's one of them. Well, I'm wondering what Tesla had, because Tesla, I think, was also has a strange background. So, you know, do we have space people walking among us? I asked Glenn Steckling that, and you can ask him that at Laughlin when he comes November 10th to 12th. Yes. And he told me several incidents where he and his mother saw them walking down the street in England. So could they mix with us? Yes. Colonel Corso said that in the book that I just wrote that what was, you know, the body was a clone, extraterrestrial biological entity, and they were scared to death that whoever made that clone was walking among us. In other words, that the beings were mixed in with humans, and he said they could be walking the halls of the Pentagon. So anyway, the Adamski lecture tapes are invaluable. You can get them online. They talk about the shift from war economy to a space economy, which is what Kennedy talked about. It would have switched our economies. We would not be in a wonderful war economy right now. If we could have done it back in the 50s, it was a time in the timeline where it could have been switched, and we chose the war economy. But then Adamski added, you have to create the wars. So are we creating wars? I mean, these people were very wise. Nobody listened to them. Orthon was real. When he put his foot down, In Desert Center, he left a shoe print, and that shoe print was made, a cast was made of that shoe print by George Hunt Williamson. And for those people that really know UFO research, George Hunt Williamson, like Leonard Stringfield, are classics researchers. George Hunt Williamson's books are amazing. They were the early books, and he made a plaster cast of Orthon's shoe. Now, these were the craft that Adamski saw. And on the bottom are craft that Antonio Uzzi from Milano is filming from his attic. These are the Adamski craft that are bell-shaped, Venusian scout hovering. But you need to read. This is what not only was in Palomar Gardens that Adamski took pictures up front with his telescope. He put his camera on his phone. We have movies. I mean, you can't, there's no way on God's earth, this huge thing's coming down that looks like that. There's no way you're going to have that be, here's Adamski with a young Desmond Leslie on the left. They were cigar-type ships. That picture, Adamski's looking out the window of that cigar-type ship. I mean, the beings that have taken some of these contactees, put them in the ship. And here's a good-looking Desmond Leslie, who he was an RAF pilot. He's behind me in this picture. With Jim Carrad, who's a pilot, who's a researcher, and there's Desmond Leslie with Colonel Corso. In 1997, I spoke with Desmond Leslie, who's going to write a book with Corso. He was in San Marino. He talked about the Adamski story, but of course, being the researcher, I had too much on my plate, and I didn't bother doing it until later. Here is, you can see Desmond in the middle there with Michael Husman. For the people that go back, way back, Bill Hamilton, Colonel Corso, and here they were, two men sharing information and planning to write a book. Desmond Leslie, who wrote the book with Adamski, explained a lot of things to the Colonel because Adamski had contact. Here's Glenn Steckling, who will be at my conference. Adamski had such contact with these beings that they would be sitting in the living room, and Glenn Steckling saw them in the family living room. He said they looked like regular young men, blonde-haired. They had cut their hair, so they had short blonde hair. And he said that he was given a gold medal. Adamski was given a gold medal by Pope John the 23rd. And Glenn has the medal. So, and very few medals were given out like that. This is the handshake. This might interest people. This is the, instead of what we do, this is the universal handshake. There's Adamski with Console Pergo in Rome. Console Pergo is part of the Amicizia case, so I'll talk about that really. Console Pergo was into UFOs like you wouldn't believe, and he had sightings, he wrote books, and so forth. Now, when I was going, at that time, I was invited to speak at Bogota, Colombia. So here I am with the Lamas in Bogota. I am speaking to Jaime Rodriguez, and I said, do you have any human-type alien stories? And he goes, yeah, we do. And he's talking to me. This is Bogota, Colombia. There's Dr. Anthony Choi from Peru. I've talked to them about these cases. Then in I think he said it was 1979, a spaceman named Banju came down to the Ecuadorian embassy in Peru, said he was a commander of a spaceship. The first thing that was told to this poor guy, and I'm going backwards, is, you know, we can kill you. And he said, come outside. He said, I'm wearing around my neck, and you can see this is a representation, a kind of a lucid square. You could, it was like a cube. He says, I'm being monitored from the ship. He said, come outside, I'll show you the ship. It's over the embassy. All the people walked outside. The ship was over the embassy. He came back 2-3 times to the embassy. The people that saw him, the secretary is still there. Several people are still there. I have a movie on this. And he told them that they were going to have an earthquake, and if they didn't move the people from the small town, that all the people would die. And all that the people at the embassy were interested in was arms, how many tanks were in the following country, how many arms they had, how many tanks they had, what the capacity was for war. They didn't even pay attention to what he was telling them. Not only what did Banju, and I don't know where he came from, tell them about an earthquake, but also the Apunians had told Vlado Kapitanovich about earthquakes, hoping that the towns would move so that they wouldn't have the disaster. Well, that means they're time travelers. Here is a representation of Banju And this is real. All I need is the money to go down there and talk to the secretary myself and to get all the people who were in the embassy. He then walked off. They would follow him as he walked out of the embassy. He'd walk around the corner and disappear. And they were upset about that. They couldn't control him. I mean, but the first words are, welcome, we can kill you. You know, we can put you in jail. Here's Jaime Maussan covering the Antonio Uzi case, and I've covered it too when I lived in Italy from 1994 to 2007. I've been with Uzi. I was in Mexico City when he was with Jaime Maussan's conference, and Uzi showed me a UFO up in the sky in broad daylight, and we had Mexican television filming it. I took my own camera and filmed it too because I was there and I had the movie camera. So I don't know, Uzi takes amazing photographs. You can see on the right-hand side, Uzi photographs. And you can see, here's Uzi photographs. I mean, I'm looking at these photographs and I'm looking at them detaching from the bottom. It looks like spheres or reconnaissance spheres detaching from the bottom. Maybe that's what was going on with the ships that, what's his name, Adamski had, you know, that he was taking. These are Uzi photographs. They are not metal buttons. There are so many Uzi movies that, you know, they just had a child. He lives on the top of a high-rise that has an attic, and when they're eating or something, he feels that they're there. He did it with me too. He walked across the street, he felt they were there. He pointed to the sky, and I hadn't seen anything, and there it was. He just is able to take the most incredible photographs. These are not photographs. They're not Photoshop. They are not metal buttons. Like I had a stupid conversation online with some people that, you know, that don't bother to see who he is, where he comes from, or all his movies. They would say they were metal buttons. No, these are movies. These are frames from movies. The buttons are not on going around the sky. There's nothing holding those buttons. And if you can see the bottom one, there's two little dots that are coming out of that craft. So here are others. Messages of 50s and 60s are given to contactees in Italy. The details of my book are in my book, Exopolitics, All the Above, and in Timothy Good's book. The photo on the top is of a space woman. She comes from the Maurizio Cavallo case. Travis Walton met space people. He said they look like twins. So, you know, he met different groups of ETs. Here is the Charles Hall case. I did that case. It was really hard to do. It's 2 years worth. I thought I'd go crazy, so I got a pilot to do it with me because he's the one that called all the people, the guys that Charles gave me the names of. And this is 1965. It's 1 year. 1 year. That's it. I had to get the names of the guys that were in the barracks there when all the strange stuff was happening there in Indian Springs. And there's what he said the teacher looked like. And if you read the books, Millennial Hospitality, read volume 2, because you know, there's 5 volumes. But volume 2 will tell you about what happened with the teacher, what happened with Charles saying he had to be really careful when you talk to these people because they were hyper paranoid, and that she would bring the 2 kids to watch him, you know, send up the weather balloons with the satellite to measure the wind. He was the only one out there. And she used, and her famous words were, "We love our kids more than you love your kids." And there was an incident where one of the tall white little boys scared a serviceman, and he threw a wrench at him and broke his arm. So I had to find all that. I had to call the guys. I took him to Indian Springs. You'll see here we are. He took me to the house where the little girl used to come out and play with the little alien girl. Yeah, you know, and her mother didn't know it at 10:30 at night. Is there a lot of things to read? Yes. Do not go on internet. Read the book. Charles is telling you. He said, the way I did this story is that I found him in Roswell selling his books that everybody thought was science fiction. And then when he started talking to me and I looked at his eyes, he was remembering. And I could ask him questions and he could answer them immediately with emotion. So he was telling the truth. This is a really hard story to talk about. I can't do it right now. Probably will be one of the last books I write, Dr. Michael Wolf Cruvant. I was the only journalist to go to his house, Hartford, Connecticut, 3 times. The person that he was an interface. He also worked at S4. He was an interface, double agent, worked in Europe, and the being that he was an interface for was Sarah from Altair 4, and he's on the left. That is a photograph of Sarah. So, you know, can he mix in with us? Yes. Did I go to Billy Meyer? Yes. We have some incredible footage of Wendell Stevens talking about the Billy Meyer case, because he went and he researched that with Britt and Lee Elders and so forth. When I went to see Billy Meyer, Billy sent me Guido Musbrucker with that white crazy hair that you see. The only book that I recommend is In Still They Fly. That Guido Musbrucker was a medical doctor who was a skeptic. And he wrote this book, And Still They Fly, an amazing book about Billy Meyer, amazing details. You know, how the beings think and why they wouldn't let other people get close to the ship and so forth. I'm with 3 Italians. I went to see Billy. He is telling the truth. That is not a gold digger, the picture of Asket or Semyazi. I think it's Asket. How could Billy Meyer even know about the Dean Martin show? Another thing about Billy Meyer, he spent a lot of time in India. A lot of time. He's got, if you listen to the Wendell Stevens interview, and I hope to show that next year, he had over 300 photographs Billy did of contact in India when he was in India. So, you know, it's not something he made up. Before I went to see Billy Meyer, I went to the Tucson airport and spent 3 hours consulting with Stevens, because I wanted to know what to expect. I wanted to know what he thought. I wanted to know why this whole thing has been debunked, and it hasn't. And there was no Photoshop in 1973, but people don't use any logic. And the excuse they use, which is totally ridiculous, is pictures are too beautiful. The pictures are too perfect. Well, of course, because his relationship, Billy Meyer's relationship with these people, were that he was to photograph. That was his job. We're going to be here, here, here at this hour. You take the camera and you take pictures of us. And that was his job. He was supposed to take photos of all the different type of scoutcraft and so forth. And of course, the books are beautiful. And I had the privilege of speaking to the townspeople. So when I talked to them about the Billy Meyer case, they all supported it. And anything that Wendell Stevens does, I don't question anymore. Colonel Wendell Stevens was one of the best researchers, and he was the only international one. The stuff he gave me from Italy was incredible. Here we are at going to the train on the way to Billy Meyer. I went with Rocco, Barbara, and Carlo. Now, Guido Musbrucker, I went to Schmidt Rudy. Anybody can go on a Sunday to Schmidt Rudy. It's hard to find, believe me, but we found it. And Guido Musbrucker, God bless him, has passed on. And when Billy saw me, you know, evidently the FIGU people didn't want him to speak to me. Everybody in the world has been there, even Shirley MacLaine. And he saw me. In fact, I rubbed shoulders with him. He's the one that sent me Guido Musbrucker. He just said he speaks English really well, so you ask him any questions you want. I've been to these hills. I talk to the townspeople. This is real. This one at the bottom comes from NASA. NASA was really interested in this case. This one at the bottom was sent to an engineer. I mean, he must have got it from Billy Meyer case, to a scientist in Florence, and making comments about this case. Because they're, of course, you know, where we're going to go with this is the propulsion system. I mean, nobody cares what anybody thinks inside or where they come from or what their story is. But here are some Italian cases. This is going to, and these are the images of the Italian cases. Eugenio Siracusa, same time period as Adamski. You can see him up there in Italy on Mount Etna walking around. Gets the same message. We are a federation. You better watch the nuclear. Do not shoot at our ships. There he is with Maurizio Cavallo. Maurizio Cavallo has the Polaroids that you saw at the beginning. There's a letter to Eugenio Siracusa from good old President Eisenhower saying, you know, your recent letter reached Mrs. Eisenhower and I will do our best. It's all peace on earth. Don't use nuclear. It's no win game. There's Dwight D. Eisenhower writing to an Italian contactee. So is it serious? Yes. Messages, do not attack our craft. We do not tolerate the unjustifiable violence. We can justify an error, but not the perseverance in error. It says here, do not force us to show you that we possess very convincing means to turn you away from any warlike ideas towards us and those who on the planet do not respect and unscrupulously follow the rules of nature, because it's also ecological. I mean, they said we were raping the planet. We were using, one of my stories, Guy Andronique, who was on the island of Pankatofa, he was a physical scientist, and the French were doing H-bomb testing. They did 800 H-bomb tests on that island, killed all the fish and all the coral. 3 feet of dead fish on the runway. Don't you think these people think we're nuts? 3 feet of dead fish on all the coral. And this is in the he said it was like in the 1980s. This is just France. Don't even ask about what the States did. H-bomb tests. This story, and I can't go into it, but maybe people who know their UFO history know Beyond the Light Barrier, Elizabeth Clare. This is one of her photos, 1956. Look at the date, 56. Elizabeth Clare, South Africa, has a relationship with a being. South Africa has a child by him. And South Africa is given awards by the British. Report Beyond the Light Barrier. Her photographs, Michael Husband said, are among the best. He's from Proxima Centauri. His name is Akon. Akon. And there she is with him. And if you read the book, if you can get the book, she's got a picture of a friend she brought back, a ring he gave her. This 1956, remember the dates. This is Maurizio Cavallo. He was a follower of Eugenio Siracusa that you just saw that President Eisenhower wrote to. Cavallo was 17 years old when he went to Siracusa's house. Cavallo had his own contacts that ruined his life. He lost his family, his wife, and so forth, because he kept going back into the French mountains, the French Alps. This is his chief guy. His name was Sewell. He looks like us, and he was working in a bank. Here he is coming out of the ship. This is a story that Jaime Maussan did with me, because there is audio tape of him talking, of Sewell talking. These are the beings that Cavallo photographed. We didn't pay attention to him. Italy didn't pay attention to him. And who pays attention to everybody are the Japanese. So he went to Japan. These are more photos. Billy Meyer's materials was bought by Japan. They have his movies. They're movies. So it's not a fishing pole with ships. The craft is going over a highway. It's all in Japan. There's craft pieces, Wendell Stevens told me. Japanese bought them. This is part of Maurizio Cavallo's film on the ship. He said it's a transparent ship, then it becomes solid. These are the beings. Twiggy is on the bottom because Charles Hall told me that's who the teacher looked like, but up on the top is Ascot from Billy Meyer. It's the Travis Walton case, and look at the woman that's aboard the ship with the Maurizio Cavallo. She looks like Grace Kelly. He was able to do the Polaroids. He only showed them to me, and the Japanese offered to buy them for $15,000, and he refused. He said aliens are not for sale. And so, but they were given to show me. I was the first journalist there, and it was predicted that I would go there because he let me in the door. I was shocked. He said, 10 years ago, Sewell told me an American journalist would be knocking on my door. Let her in. We call her the Bridge. So he let me in and showed me the images. Get this book. This is the book that's got this case. And I'm going to try to explain this case, but it's very difficult. This case is 1956, because they call them the 56s. There's Dr. Michael Sala, who's the only one that brought Stefano Brescia to the United States. Everybody ignores anything that isn't American. I mean, we're playing around here. Like, it's like there's so much material out there, and there's so many people to talk to, and these beings are going to every country that we only get a piece of it. We don't get all of it. In Pescara in 1956, the same year as Elizabeth Clare, we have these tall beings. That guy is 10 feet tall, Kino on the right, living near Montesilvano, Pescara. and they are making an effort with 10 Italians to communicate through crystal radio and be seen. They're also seeing Bruno Samachicha, that was involved with this, housed these beings in a castle called Rocca Pia. Some were 10 feet tall, so he had to remodify the beds. Some were very short. That image, you can hardly see it of the Italians walking next to them, but they are vegetarian, just like the ones that Menger met with the fruit. And so the jobs, and I talked to Gaspare di Lama about this, Samachicha had to bring in truckloads of fruit. He would take the driver to the local bar for coffee, and the beings, and they call them the W56s. If you hear about the Friendship or Amicizia case, W56, the year was 56, and they didn't know what to name them because they couldn't figure out what planet they came from. They had an underwater base. And so and this is 56, these craft, and that's a photograph on the left, were coming out of the water, and they're being photographed. There's Gaspare di Lama, who was part of the 10 Italians that were part of Amicizia. And you're going to see me with Gaspare in a minute, because I had to go to Lake Como on this trip to get him, to get his testimony. He's 94 years old. I can't just read a book, and I'm not going to get it off internet or a video, and there's an incredible video. Gaspare told me a lot. He told me that the deal was this, that they would communicate and give the Italians information, provided the Italians would not fight among themselves. That the W56s had a technology called ureda, which meant harmony, and that everybody had to keep that vibration in order to communicate. Here I am, that's my camera, with Gaspare di Lama, but I went with Sara and Filippo, who are close friends of mine from Turin, and there's Gaspare at 94 years old reading the message from Sigir. Now, I've told you some of the messages from the Space Brothers in the past. There's Gaspare in the middle, and there's a photo of a UFO taken by Gaspare. Gaspare took a lot of photos. Here we are, I'm walking, this is Lake Como, I'm walking with him. He's really spry, he's got more energy than I'll ever dream of having. This is the language that these beings had. There's the crystal radios that they communicated with. There's one of the beings. He is over 9 feet tall. He looks like us. Here's some photographs taken in Pescara, but there are so many black and whites taken by Ghibaldi, taken by Gaspare di Lama. Here it says, and this was what the Sigir, who was one of the W56s, kept telling them. You must remain united and understand your weaknesses to evolve as humanity and as our close friends. Try to be more compassionate. Now, this humanity is the same thing that Robert Short said when we put him under Giant Rock. It's the same message was given to Van Tassel and Adamski. It's given to the Italians here. Try to be more compassionate. They said that their technology, which was called Ureda, would not last if they started fighting. So after about, he said it was about, this went on for about 10 to 20 years. The people that were involved with this started fighting among themselves, and it got to be really difficult and tense. So these beings said, we can't stay here, and they left. And then I asked Gaspare, I said, did they really leave? Do you think they really left? You know, to come all the way here, you have an underwater base. It explains, you know, in Timothy Good's book, and you can read it, how the land would open up and you could go down in the base dimensionally. It was really interesting. And Gaspare said, no, he didn't believe they left. You know, but I think if they were walking around, we wouldn't even recognize them. So are there human type aliens? Yes. I realized that the only way that these people are going to try to connect with humanity is not in the United States anymore. I mean, we're technologically savvy. All we care about is the propulsion system. We back engineering free energy as in the 1950s. Stephen Greer is right. We have all this technology. We never cared about who was inside, and neither did they really in Italy, because in Italy got to be a jealousy situation. So I had to go to Latin America. There's no other place. And I began doing my research with Sisto Paz Wells, who will be in Laughlin. with an interpreter and talk about how this all happened. And this happened in a different date, 1970s. The beings that are flying around that are like us have given up coming here because they'll shoot them first and ask questions later, and they don't really care about where they come from. They're considered the enemy. In Latin America, we have Sisto, who through meditation and automatic writing, and he was using meditation techniques, got through the automatic writing, got an invitation to go to the Chilca Desert. And Luis Fernando Mostacio and Ricardo Gonzalez are people that were involved with him at that time. I did an interview with Charlie, who is transgendered into Veronica, who was Sisto Paz's brother, transgendered into Veronica, and she lives in California. I mean, in Canada now. She lives in Canada, in Ontario. And she, and you can see, you can't see them really well here with the young boys that went out to the Chilca Desert. And you know, Sisto and Charlie's father was really upset because for many, many, many years he wanted contact, and here their sons are getting contact. They went out to Chilca and actually physically met the beings. Veronica and her contact with Godar is explained in an interview that I did, and everybody has seen this. It's gotten so many views. It's on YouTube. Look up Veronica Paz Wells, talks about the early 70s and the fact that she met Godar, who was from Apu, the same human-looking type, long blonde-haired people that are visiting Ricardo Gonzalez, that visited Sisto, that are visiting Roberto Vega, and Enrique Villanueva. Enrique Villanueva speaks English. He lives in California. He'll be part of the Laughlin conference this year. Now, you can't just go out there and say, hi, aliens, you know, can you come down and do tricks for us in the sky or whatever the heck we silly people do. These people went out there, and you can see they're camping, and they're not only camping, but they're camping and they're only drinking juice and water. They are fasting to bring up their own personal vibration. And a lot of these people, and you have to go to Lima, Peru to interview them, have had contact because of this situation. The only way I could interview these people was through Skype with Sisto, with Giorgio Piacenza, who was the interpreter. This is Luis Fernando Mostacio. He is from Bolivia. He has contact with the Great White Brotherhood under Lake Titicaca. I've known him since I met him at Michael Sala's conference in 2009. He is amazing. He's going all over the world with messages from the Great White Brotherhood, which are a kind of elder ETs. They have robes. They are the, people call them the masters, the teachers. And he was at my, there's a UFO there, there's a UFO there. Everywhere they go, these guys. Here's how it happens in the case of Ricardo Gonzalez and especially Sisto Paz. If you're out in the Chilca Desert, what's created is a Zendra, which is a mist, which is a common mist between you and the being. You walk in there in the mist, and they have a common atmosphere, so they can communicate with you. It's very interesting because you're going to hear from Enrique Villanueva, his contact in Shasta. Here he is. He's on Facebook a lot, but he speaks Spanish on Facebook, and yet he speaks very good English. I interviewed him. You can go on YouTube. His interview is amazing. How he saw two Apunians, or several Apunians in Shasta, and how they floated over to him. And he is also from Peru. I mean, these guys all knew Sisto Paz Wells. There they are. Ricardo Gonzalez, probably I'm more close to him because Ricardo has contact with Antarel, but it is a peaceful thing. It is for world peace. Do you remember that the W-56 has said, unless you guys get together, we can't have a dialogue with you? We can't stay here? Well, Ricardo Gonzalez has gone right to the crux of the matter. All of his encounters are peace-based, world peace-based. Let's get together in a group. Let's bring the energy. And he uses the Roish peace flag. Now, Nicholas Roish, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him, was a mystic, Russian, painted 6,000 paintings, and lived in India. So anybody that's near India, I always start wondering. He was looking for the city of Shambhala, which we call the, ideal Brigadoon, the ideal city where people see. In the end, I mean, the bottom line here is, unless people get together in the city of Shambhala, or unless people get together without the judgments, without the hatred, without the jealousy, without the everything, you're not going to talk to anybody in the cosmos. The vibration isn't that high. I mean, the beings can't just go to individual countries. I mean, they're not doing that. They want the humanity to get together on some spiritual level. And so Roish, who understood this as an artist, painted the first, and you can see it here, the circle with the 3 red dots, first peace flag for the League of Nations. He did it for the League of Nations. So to me, it's very, very important that people come together for world peace. And Ricardo's had, I guess, 9 now encounters with Antarel, who is a 10-foot tall being from Apu, who has given him direct messages about the future. He says they're time travelers from the future, that unless we get our act together, we're going to go the way that their planet came from Apu went, which means that they destroyed their planet ecologically, and some of them have to live underground. The planet has been discovered in the constellation of Alpha Centauri. Ricardo's book, Contact from Apu, and I didn't put an image of it here, is so important because he gives all the messages that Antarel gave. Usually he is in this forest. I'm with him the first time in 2014. I had an experience there. It's in Ricardo's books. This is the experience. Before I even got there, they got what they call psychic photographic impressions. And what they do is they take out a notebook, they put their impressions there. In this particular case, what happened in Shasta, I'm there, standing right where I was standing. They couldn't know that in a million years, because I picked where I stood. It says Harris right here. And it happened exactly the way it was in the notebook. And they got it, I think I was there like a week later. And this is the being. His name is Antarel, and he's from Apu. Now, he's physical. This is physical. This isn't some kind of, he's physical when he chooses to be. And Ricardo sees him and interacts with him. But Ricardo's been having this contact. He's in his 40s now for 20 years. So the contact with Antarel has only been like 8 times. What's happening now is that Antarel appears on the ship with a girl named Vika. And she's regular statue. There's Ricardo Gonzalez speaking at my first conference in 2014. He spoke last year, 2016. He got a standing ovation, and all the people in the room walked out with him because he had such a powerful message about peace, about the beings asking us to look at ourselves before we look at them. Here I am at a conference for world peace in Argentina. He has a center for world peace in Argentina. There he is. There I am with my interpreter explaining my experience in Shasta. And here is, and for Ricardo, he doesn't care anymore. I mean, when he's talking, this craft appeared over our heads. There is no airport. It couldn't be anything else. At Uritorco, January 18th, at night, there is no flight path. Nothing goes over Uritorco and near Cordova, and it's filled with craft. And it's a common occurrence. These people aren't even surprised anymore. I mean, and really, they're saying it's not about the craft. So this year, June 23rd, we're coming to the close of the lecture. So 23rd, I made an effort, this is Shasta, to go to Monte Perdido in the Pyrenees. Ricardo is there. He brought with him Alicia Rodriguez. Alicia Rodriguez is Nobel Peace for the Nicholas Roish Museum in New York. She's holding the League of Nations flag. And our purpose in Monte Perdido, which is like 3 hours from Barcelona, was to meditate on peace and get some kind of message how to go forward here. Because here we are, and you saw me with Stephen Greer before, out in the middle of nowhere. The Apunians are saying that if enough people get together with a pure heart and an intention and want help, they will help. But they're not going to come down here and help anybody unless the human beings get together in a group and lead the way. They have to lead the way. In other words, they don't want, you know, it can't be that you want them to come down and save us and fix everything. And even though Edgar Mitchell, before he died, said that we had averted several nuclear problems thanks to the ETs, and I know that's true. When they start nuclear missiles in a sequence in 1969, they're pointed towards Russia. And that are pointed towards us when they start them, which they did in Russia, and when they stopped them, the sequence in Maelstrom Air Force Base, they're giving us a clear message that they can control the situation and that we have missiles pointing at each other. It's a checkmate, that this insanity. And it's going on now. I mean, I'm not even going to go into the political situation, but the raping of the planet, the putting in of the pipeline through Indian land in North Dakota is a mortal sin. I can't believe that you would go through Indian lands to put a pipeline. The steel is made somewhere else and the oil is going somewhere else. It's not even going to the United States. That the petrodollar is still the most important thing on the planet. That you know, people are killed over petrodollars and over oil fields. That we can't you know, accept diversity, you know, among us. And so we're going to have aliens walking around. You know, they're not stupid. If just like the W-56s said, you can't live among yourselves in harmony, we can't stay here. If, you know, all of these messages, but I had to go all around the world to get a clue that it's real, that these things are real. I knew they were real from Hynek, but I came to the conclusion that the distraction in the UFO field is that science needs to be the thing to prove everything, which is wrong. That the abduction is the only alien that's here, which is wrong. I knew there was harvesting of DNA, but Dr. John Mack told me personally in my Italian house when he came there and stayed for a week that it ended in 1992 and the people were being directly downloaded. To put the little gray as the image for the cosmic contact of this planet, for me, is the most irresponsible, crazy, you know, circus, cartoonish thing you can absolutely do. So, and we're a lot better than that. This is us in Monte Perdido meditating for peace. We did it during the day. It's a lot of mantras. What you do is you say for about a half an hour. You do a lot of mantras and you do individual praying, individual you know, meditations. Here's Ricardo with the group. To have a dialogue with extraterrestrial civilizations, we must be at peace with ourselves, then peace on the planet. We need to meditate. By the way, all these contactees, all of them, they all meditate. They all find time to clear their minds. We can try, and then and when the invitation comes, we'll have a dialogue and it'll begin. There we are in the field. There's Essen Sekarara, who's at my conference in Laughlin last year, and the lady with the white hair was my interpreter. It's all done in Spanish. You know, it's very difficult for me because he lectures in Spanish. It's all in Spanish. I have to have an interpreter glued to me. You can communicate with the cosmos with protocols and good intentions and meditations. If you will lead, we will match your efforts, is a message that Antarel communicated to me in Mount Shasta. In other words, we will match the efforts if you will lead. Now, the message that we got from Apu, Ivica belongs to a generation of hybrid humans with Apunians, because at some point we have destroyed our planet. They are time travelers. She is trying to make us avoid this. She is trying to make us not evacuate. She is trying to ask us to look at the situation that has already happened. The whole entire UFO field is connected with time travel. It's connected with the problem with time, our perception of time, with dimensions, and so forth. And she said, I am Ivica, I'm communicating through the vortex placed here. In fact, we were in a circle, and there was strange stuff in the middle. I could see it. It was like a mist. It was very strange. She said, it is a natural node which we have simulated as a communication bridge. We are aware of your questions and worries. You must know that the devised plan is continuing, and we are walking by your side even though you cannot see us, and though we move in different timelines. Isn't that interesting? Do not worry too much about the announcement made by scientists on Earth. Although the processes have accelerated, you are now in a margin of action which can alter events. She's referring to Stephen Hawking saying we have to evacuate the planet in 100 years. Because Ricardo was told that. Stephen Hawking went public with that. We got to go to Mars. That's why they're all racing to go to Mars. An important scientist who knows about the ARC project as well as your contact experience with us will approach you, will share information. It is possible that program trips of 2018 may undergo changes. These alleged changes will occur to provide you the best conditions to set a base for your tasks. It is important that you keep up with the preparation and are able to maintain the work which you have been entrusted with. Many among you wish to see us and encounter us, but frankly, few are those who accept with responsibility and discipline that which being in contact with our group, our crew, involves. In other words, you can't handle it. You think you can, but you can't. You couldn't handle it. So few of you. So it says, to all of you gathered here, we renew our friendship and our firm desire to collaborate. You are the ARC, for you bring together distinct features which are unique to the human species. You represent the effort of one who walks, who saw, who wishes to share this vision with others. Maintain only this frequency which will lead you to key decision-making point as an adequate, full, and conscious endowed determination at the right moment can change everything. You can tell your companions they can enter the circle in silence. We have stimulated a bridge of light in the physical space you created. Stay there for a few minutes, see, listen, feel, and receive something. So what they had done was in that circle, and this is after 2 hours of sitting, you know, they had created a vortex of some kind where everybody individually could be activated or got thoughts or got ideas. Or in my case, I just felt like I was physically stronger because I had been really tired. It had been very, very hot in Barcelona and in Italy. So, you know, I went in the middle there. It was so dark I couldn't even, in fact, Ricardo's wife came and she touched my arm to go back to the chair because I couldn't even find my chair. It was so dark. They're not allowed to use flashlights. That you're totally in the darkness under the stars. And I must say that since I was sitting next to Ricardo, you saw the picture of me bundled up. I watched it after 2 hours. What happens with him, if we keep the mantra up, if we keep the voice vibration, remember it's a vibration in your voice. He took a notebook and went crazy just writing. He didn't even think. He kept turning the pages and writing. And I just read what came out of there. I mean, it's so what? There's no reason. There's no way he could have thought of that, any of that stuff. He never thought of it. It came like directly from wherever they were. And did we have sightings? We had a few. It was a very, very cloudy night. And what had happened was that the stars, the clouds broke away all at once. We saw all the stars, and we saw one craft that they pointed the laser at, and it was a craft. And then he got this automatic writing message, and it's powerful. And I have put it on my Facebook, and anybody that wants it, I'll give it to you. I was with Ricardo in the Atacama Desert in September, where he disappeared and had physical contact with Ivica. The thing that he came back with was that we are going to be having some serious ecological problems. And it's not just the ice, the piece of ice the size of Delaware that broke off in the Arctic, because that thing has to melt. It has no choice. It's got to melt. So you got water coming on both coasts. And other things that are happening. But one of the messages that was given to him when he came back, and he was exhausted, he walked away on a sand dune and was gone for an hour. And we were in the desert, we had to keep, you know, maintaining the mantras and so forth. One of the messages was war over water. Water was going to be a precious commodity. The Native American says you cannot eat and drink cash. So I realized that people are going to have to look at the ecology of their cities. They're going to have to look at different ecological problems and deal with them, because that alone will just destroy the entire planet. Weather patterns, heat, cold. When I was in Rome, the whole city had a blackout because of they couldn't sustain all the air conditioners and everything that went. I mean, if we don't have a collective consciousness towards this, and I'm going to talk about collective consciousness in 1 minute. What are the protocols that we have in place for contact? Well, in Monte Perdido, it was meditation with Stephen Greer. It's the puja ceremony, meditation, but total quiet. People can't be jumping up and yelling, here we are. Here, I've seen that other places, and that's crazy. And these are the questions we have, and we should be discussing, as a matter of national security, we could be discussing, all my books are military pilots, astronauts. If you want to play the national security card, we could go to the United Nations on that. But my feeling is this, that these private companies, Rutan, Virgin Galactic, Elon Musk, SpaceX, and Bigelow Enterprises, Space Enterprises are going to be taking humans either to Mars or into space in the next 10 years. There's no way you're not going to meet them. There's no way that if we use a regular way of travel, and I do believe in portals and jump rooms and so forth, but if we use these commercial companies to go to planets, there is no way you're not going to have contact. It's just what kind of contact you're going to have. In my research, the contacts are benign, which means they're just extraterrestrial. There's no good or bad or indifferent. They just are. They are what they are, what they are. They're not into, sucking your blood, eating your children, taking, so why would you want a human soul anyway? And taking over a planet. And why would you, you can go to any planet and get slaves. There are planets out there that are much more primitive than we are. They got high hopes for us. They really have high. In my 30 years, I'm ashamed even to face any of those beings, because they have really high hopes for us. They think we can make it. They think we can have a really great dialogue. They think we're amazing. And they're going to individuals. They're not going to why would they go and sign it? They don't need to sign anything. They're in charge of the whole agenda. Some of the things that come up, they don't need to sign anything. They can do anything they want. Some of the mythology and ufology is ridiculous. And I use common sense on some of this. What I suggest you do is read the early days and see what the messages were of the early days. Then go to Europe. I mentioned the Amicizia friendship case. You can see a whole video on that. Go to Latin America, study, or come to Laughlin and talk to Cecil Paz Wells. Study these companies. They're going to bring people, especially Virgin Galactic, my God, Rutan and Branson. This is a letter that Einstein and Oppenheimer wrote to President Truman, signed by Albert Einstein and Robert Oppenheimer, saying that after the atomic bomb, they had visitations, and these are cosmic cultures. It's called Relationships, and it's a Majestic 12 document, Relationships with Inhabitants of Celestial Bodies. They didn't say relationships with the little clones. Inhabitants, people. And a culture is done by people. Culture means art and the whole thing, music. And so this is what ufology is today. This, I'm sorry about this. I don't think it's fun. I won't ever partake in this, and none of this will ever be part of my Laughlin conference. It's not fun. This is serious. This is not funny. It's not fun. It's not funny. The beings that are watching us, the people that are watching this, going, are you kidding? As long as people also are thinking that the only UFOs are abduction beings, then they keep the whole thing under fear. So everybody's scared. Everybody's terrified out of their minds. And, you don't look at them as beings. And that's one of the reasons the Billy Meyer case was shut down, because they don't want you going to Schmidt Rudy up in Switzerland, seeing one of these women or men, and the men had beards. It was really interesting because Ta had beard. You usually don't see ETs with beards, but the people who came from the Pleiades were people. And they don't want you, inviting them to Starbucks for a coffee. You start bonding with these people, it's very dangerous for the planet. So I've come to that conclusion that, the reason why the human type alien scenario has been kept is, secret the way it is because they don't want you, just, getting involved in with the enemy, and then they have no control over the masses. That doesn't happen in South America. I believe, this is what I believe, that the only connection you can have with these people is a heart connection, because they're too intelligent. They have technology that will blow us all out of the water. So the only connection you can have is the corazon, the heart. And who has the biggest hearts and the biggest corazons? Latin American people. So they go straight to them. They know they're not going to ask about the propulsion system. A Latin American person will go up and say, "Hola, how are you?" So Deepak Chopra says, in ending, an emerging global brain through social media networks is raising collective consciousness. And the real revolution is the evolution of consciousness. Now, we have a selective consciousness. We have an individual consciousness. Everybody has free will. So we do what's good for us. So we don't care about the person down the street or the neighbor upstairs or anybody. And the problem is you can't come together like that, because this is an experiment in free will. Whether God did it or, the universe did it or whatever, the other planets, for some reason, have evolved into a collective consciousness. A consciousness, raising the collective consciousness, doing what's good for the other person. What Jesus mainly said is love God as yourself and love your neighbor. And you love God first and love your neighbor as yourself. So love the universe and all the creation of it first. And then you have to love the person next door, whether he looks like you or not, or anybody else, as yourself. That is a collective consciousness. If we switch to the collective consciousness, we got it made. Other planets are already there. They're doing collective consciousness. They're not going to do anything that's going to hurt their kids or them. And they probably passed what we passed. The real revolution is the evolution of consciousness. Okay, here's the cast of thousands. It's going to be in Laughlin, Nevada. I am trying to change the look of conferences. So I do have Sisto Pazuells. I do have Enrique Villanueva. I do have Karen Nickel, who will do guided meditations. Andrea Perron, who is the person who wrote the books on that sponsored and inspired The Conjuring, movie The Conjuring. She's very positive thinking about dimensionality, ghosts, and so forth. Regina Meredith, who will open the entire conference. Colin Andrews, who has agreed by Skype to talk about consciousness for 15 minutes and welcome you all. Clifford Stone, who will be on the stage with George Neri of Coast to Coast. George will ask Clifford about the 12 retrievals he did. And Clifford himself told me that there was nothing hostile in any of the beings that were alive. Jaime Maussan just called me. He basically will talk about the Nazca mummies. And he's a journalist like I am. He's not going to, you can't just ignore stories. And it's in Spanish, so nobody here is understanding anything. And so they hoax. Get a Spanish translating system and listen to the doctors that put their lives on the line and their careers on the line on those mummies. I'm convinced if the carbon dating is 99% human, that's fine. I mean, three-fingered human is fine. But at least we're doing something. We're not going to ignore the story. Don Schmidt is also, he is the host, and so is Cheryl Jones. Don will talk about his work with Roswell. I mean, Roswell is so important. I just lost the screen here. I hope I can bring it back to you. Just hang on a minute. Here it is. And okay, so the next, in the end, this conference is supposed to change the paradigm, because it is about consciousness. Grant Cameron's coming just for the heck of it. He wants to hang out. We have an experiencer session in the morning. We're going to have Ruben Langdon talk about the citizen hearing Friday night. We have a cocktail party where everybody's dressing in red because it's Living La Vida Loca. The color is red. We have a lot of wonderful things going on, and the film will be on Acknowledged by Stephen Greer. Yeah, spend your life doing strange things with weird people. And why, you know, the future of mankind is involved here. This is not a game. I don't think ufology is something that is a hobby. I think it's the most important question about our roots. Why do we study it for the kids? I have no doubts and I've got no illusions. My work is going to go into an archive and that's it, because my work is nuts and bolts interviews with the real people, and what we got going out there is a lot of entertainment. And so that's why I'm doing it, because I want the future, the kids, to go to some library 200 years from now when disclosure has happened and be able to get the materials. Let's embrace the challenge for us in the future and our future generations. You know, when you read the Colonel Corso book, the being said, when he asked Colonel Corso to come aboard, the Colonel said, "What do you have to offer me?" The being telepathically said, "A new world if you can take it." So going back to the first slide and going back to what we want to have happen, let's go back to the future, study the messages of the past for the future. And are there more presentations like this? Yes. All the videos of all the people I interviewed are online. I have the DVD of the group of Giant Rock so that you can learn about Giant Rock. Get the books I mentioned, and the Timothy Good book, Earth and Alien Enterprise, has all of this in it, plus my 5, of course. It's important. I think I'm here to say that I'm a teacher, and I think I did my homework. And I hope you do yours, and do not get all your information out of internet that is secondhand, digested and judgmental. I can't make decisions until I get involved in the situation. And it's so complex. I mean, people say, "What is this about?" And I say, it's so darn complex. It's paranormal, it's interdimensional, it's metaphysical, it's physical, it's the history of humanity, the history of the cosmos, and spiritual, it's all of it. So with that, I'll come to the close of the presentation and hope that you learned a little bit, and that you will read, because I'm really one that push reading. Go back to the original source. Thank you.